The train pulled away from Rawhide Station in Wyoming Territory, leaving behind a cloud of black smoke and a young woman whose future had just crumbled like dried desert clay. Josephine Taylor stood frozen on the wooden platform, her threadbare traveling dress already dusty from the journey, one battered suitcase at her feet, watching the man who had promised her everything disappear around the bend without so much as a backward glance. She had traveled for 3 weeks from Boston to meet Gerald, a businessman who had courted her through carefully written letters for 6 months. He had promised marriage, a new life in the West, opportunities beyond measure. But when she stepped off that train an hour ago, Gerald took one look at her plain face and simple dress, realized she was not the wealthy heiress he had imagined, and invented an excuse so transparent it insulted what little dignity she had left. Something about a sudden business emergency in Cheyenne. He would be back in a few days, he said. Wait at the hotel, he said. Then he boarded that same train heading east, leaving her with exactly $4.17 to her name. The station master had gone inside his office and shut the door, clearly wanting no part of whatever drama was unfolding. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the platform. Josephine picked up her suitcase, her hands trembling only slightly, and walked toward the main street of Rawhide. She refused to cry. She had cried enough when her parents died of influenza last winter. She had cried when she sold everything they owned to pay their debts. She had cried when she realized accepting Gerald's proposal was her only option besides the workhouse. But she was done crying. Rawhide in 1882 was not much to look at. A wide dirt street flanked by wooden buildings that seemed to lean into the wind. A general store, a saloon, a hotel that looked like a strong breeze might knock it over, a blacksmith, and a few other establishments she could not quite make out from this distance. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and imposing against the endless blue sky. The wind carried the scent of sage and dust and something else, something wild and untamed that made her heart race despite everything. She made it halfway to the hotel before her suitcase decided to betray her too. The worn leather handle snapped clean off, sending her stumbling forward. The suitcase hit the ground and burst open, scattering her meager possessions across the dirt. Undergarments, 2 spare dresses, her mother's Bible, a daguerreotype of her parents, and the foolish hope she had packed so carefully all lay exposed in the street. Josephine knelt in the dust, gathering her things with shaking hands, trying to ignore the curious stares from passers-by. A woman in a bright red dress laughed from the saloon porch. 2 men loading supplies onto a wagon stopped to watch. Heat rose to her cheeks, but she kept her head down and worked quickly. That suitcase has seen better days. The voice was deep, warm like whiskey, with a trace of amusement that somehow did not feel cruel. Josephine looked up, shading her eyes against the sun. The man standing before her was tall, with broad shoulders that blocked out the light. He wore dusty range clothes, a weathered hat pushed back to reveal dark hair and eyes the color of strong coffee. His face was tanned from years in the sun, with laugh lines around his eyes and a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He was not handsome in the classical sense, but there was something magnetic about him, something solid and real after all the empty promises she had endured. "It has," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, rather like its owner. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Well, you look like you are holding together better than the suitcase, at least." He knelt beside her, picking up her mother's Bible and handing it to her with surprising gentleness. "Austin Norris, madam. I own a ranch about 10 miles north of here. Josephine Taylor." She took the Bible, tucking it carefully into the broken suitcase. "Recently abandoned traveler." His eyes met hers then, and she saw understanding there, not pity. "I saw what happened at the station. That fellow was a coward and a fool. He was both those things and worse." She stood, brushing dust from her skirt. "But I would appreciate it if we could change the subject. I am trying very hard not to dwell on my catastrophically poor judgment." Austin stood as well, and she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. He was easily over 6 feet. "Fair enough. How about we discuss your immediate plans instead? The hotel here is not fit for bedbugs, let alone a lady. My choices appear somewhat limited at the moment." She gestured to her ruined suitcase. "Though I suspect even the bedbugs would be better company than my last acquaintance." He laughed at that, a genuine sound that made something warm unfurl in her chest. "I cannot argue with that logic. Look, I know this is forward and you have no reason to trust strangers after today, but my ranch needs a cook and housekeeper. The last one married a miner and moved to Deadwood 3 weeks ago. My ranch hands are about ready to mutiny over my cooking." Josephine studied him carefully. She had just been burned by trusting a man's words, but something about Austin felt different. Maybe it was the calluses on his hands or the honest dirt on his clothes. This was a man who worked for his living, not one who schemed and manipulated. Or maybe she was just a terrible judge of character. "But what choice did she have? I can cook," she said slowly. "My mother taught me well, and I am not afraid of hard work, but I need to be clear about something, Mr. Norris. I came west expecting marriage, and that fell through rather spectacularly. I am not looking for romance or complications. I need employment and a safe place to sleep. If you are offering that in good faith, I accept. If you are offering something else, I will take my chances with the bedbugs." Austin's expression grew serious. "I am offering honest work for honest pay, Miss Taylor. $30 a month, room and board. There is a small cabin on the property, separate from the main house and the bunkhouse. It needs some fixing up, but it is clean and private. You would have your own space. My ranch hands are good men, but I will make it clear you are to be treated with respect. If any of them step out of line, they will answer to me. $30 a month. She could save that. In a year, she would have enough to go anywhere, start over somewhere else." It was more than she had any right to hope for an hour ago. "Then I accept, Mr. Norris. Thank you, Austin," he said. "And I should warn you, it is not fancy living. The ranch is rough country and the work is hard." "I am not afraid of hard work," she repeated. "And after today, rough country sounds rather appealing. At least it is honest about what it is." He smiled at that, and she noticed a dimple in his left cheek. "I will get my wagon and we can load up your things." He glanced at the broken suitcase. "Such as they are. We can pick up a trunk at the general store if you need one." "I cannot afford a trunk. Consider it part of your employment. Cannot have my new cook's belongings scattered across Wyoming Territory." He tipped his hat and headed toward the livery stable before she could protest. Josephine sat on the edge of the platform, watching him go. This was either the second worst decision of her life or a stroke of unexpected luck. Time would tell which. But at least Austin Norris had looked her in the eye when he spoke to her. That was more than Gerald had managed. 20 minutes later, she was sitting beside Austin on a wagon bench, her belongings secured in a new small trunk in the back. The general store owner had given her a sympathetic look when Austin explained about the broken suitcase. News traveled fast in small towns. Everyone probably knew she had been abandoned by now. The thought made her want to sink into the earth, but she kept her chin up and her eyes forward. They rode in comfortable silence for the first mile. The landscape opened up around them, vast and empty in a way that made Boston seem like a distant dream. Rolling grassland stretched toward distant mountains, broken occasionally by rocky outcroppings and clusters of pine trees. The sky was enormous, so blue it hurt to look at directly. "It is beautiful," she said finally. "Terrifying, but beautiful. It grows on you," Austin said, guiding the horses along a well-worn trail. "When I first came out here 5 years ago, I thought I had made a mistake. Everything felt too big, too wild. But now, when I go back east to visit my sister, everything feels cramped and small, like I cannot breathe properly in cities anymore. You are from the East originally, Philadelphia. My father wanted me to be a lawyer, like him and his father before him. I wanted to work with my hands, build something of my own. We disagreed rather strongly on the matter, so I took my inheritance when I turned 21 and headed west. Bought the ranch 3 years ago with money I saved working on other people's spreads. You regret it?" She was genuinely curious. "Leaving your family, everything you knew," he was quiet for a moment, considering. "Sometimes I miss my sister. She writes me letters full of gossip about people I no longer remember. But regret leaving? No. This is where I belong. I know that in my bones." "You ever have that feeling about something? Like every choice you made, good and bad, led you exactly where you were supposed to be?" Josephine thought about that. "No," she admitted. "I have always felt like I was being pushed along by circumstances rather than choosing my own path. My parents died, so I had to sell our home. I had no money or prospects, so I had to accept Gerald's proposal. He abandoned me, so I had to accept your offer. I cannot remember the last time I made a choice simply because I wanted to." "Then maybe that is something you can learn out here," Austin said. "The West is good for that, forcing you to decide what you really want, who you really are. All the social rules and expectations do not mean much when it is just you and the land." She liked the sound of that more than she wanted to admit. The ranch came into view around sunset, and Josephine felt something loosen in her chest. It was not grand, but it was honest. A sturdy 2-story house with a wide porch, a large barn, several corrals with horses, a bunkhouse that looked recently repaired, and a small cabin set back near a grove of cottonwood trees. Mountains rose behind it all, catching the last golden light of day. 3 men emerged from the barn as the wagon approached. They were dusty and trail-worn, clearly just finishing the day's work. Austin pulled the horses to a stop in front of the main house. "Boys, this is Miss Josephine Taylor. She is our new cook and housekeeper. Miss Taylor, these are my ranch hands. That is Tom. He has been with me since the beginning. The tall one is Sam, and the young one trying to look respectable is Danny." Tom was in his 40s, weathered and lean with kind eyes. Sam was indeed tall, well over 6 feet, with a thick beard and gentle demeanor. Danny could not have been more than 19, with an eager face and nervous energy. "Madam," they said in near unison, removing their hats. "Miss Taylor will be staying in the cabin," Austin continued, his voice taking on a firm edge. "She is to be treated with complete respect. Anyone who forgets that will be looking for new employment. Are we clear?" "Clear as mountain water, boss," Tom said, and the others nodded agreement. "Good. Danny, help me unload Miss Taylor's trunk. Tom, check that the cabin has firewood and water. Sam, I am sure you have work to finish." They scattered to their tasks, and Austin helped Josephine down from the wagon. Her legs were stiff from the ride, and she stumbled slightly. He steadied her with a hand on her elbow, releasing her as soon as she found her footing. "The cabin is simple," he said, leading her across the yard. "One room, a stove, a bed, a table, and chairs. There is a pump out back for water. Privy is about 20 yards to the east. Like I said, not fancy." "It sounds like paradise compared to my alternatives." Tom had already started a fire in the small stove when they arrived. The cabin was indeed simple, but it was clean and sturdy. The bed had a real mattress, the table was solid wood, and there was even a rocking chair in the corner. A small window looked out toward the mountains. Danny and Austin brought in her trunk. Austin lingered in the doorway after Danny left. "I know it has been a long day. If you are too tired, I can rustle up something for dinner. You can start your duties tomorrow." Josephine set her mother's Bible on the table and turned to face him. "I would prefer to start now, if that is acceptable. I would like to earn my place here rather than dwelling on how I arrived." Understanding flickered in his eyes. "The kitchen is in the main house. I will show you where everything is." The ranch house kitchen was larger than she expected, with a good stove, ample counter space, and shelves stocked with basics. Clearly, someone had been managing to feed everyone, however poorly. Austin showed her the pantry, the root cellar, the smokehouse out back with its hanging meat. "We raise cattle primarily," he explained. "But we also keep chickens for eggs, a milk cow, and a vegetable garden that needs tending." The garden was my last housekeeper's pride, but it has been neglected since she left. Josephine found flour, salt pork, eggs, and some wrinkled potatoes. Not much to work with, but she had done more with less. "I can make biscuits, gravy, and fried potatoes. How many am I feeding?" "You, me, and the 3 hands. 5 total." She set to work, finding comfort in the familiar motions, cutting the salt pork, mixing the biscuit dough, peeling potatoes. Her hands knew what to do even when her mind was spinning. Austin tried to help at first, but she shooed him out, insisting she could manage. The men ate like they had been starving, which they probably had been if Austin's cooking was as bad as he claimed. They thanked her profusely, complimenting everything. It was simple food, nothing fancy, but it was hot and well prepared, and that seemed to be more than enough. After dinner, she cleaned the kitchen while the men went about their evening routines. Austin returned as she was washing the last dish. "You did not have to clean up tonight," he said. "I meant it when I said you could start tomorrow. I know. But idle hands make for troubled thoughts, and I have had enough of those today." He leaned against the door frame, watching her dry the dishes. "Can I ask you something personal, Miss Taylor?" "I suppose I owe you that much, given the circumstances." "What did you dream about? Before all this, I mean. When you thought you were coming west to marry that fool, what did you hope your life would be?" The question caught her off guard. She set down the dish she was drying and considered her answer carefully. "I dreamed of having a home again. A real home, not just a rented room or someone else's charity. I wanted a garden of my own, a kitchen where I could bake bread without asking permission. Maybe children someday. I wanted to matter to someone, to build a life that meant something." "Is that foolish?" "No," he said quietly. "That is not foolish at all. That is what most of us want, I think. We just do not always admit it." Their eyes met across the kitchen, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or recognition, like seeing a familiar face in a foreign land. "I should let you get some rest," Austin said finally. "Breakfast is usually around 6. The men start work at sunrise, so they eat early. I will be ready." He nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "For what it is worth, Miss Taylor, I think Gerald was the biggest fool in Wyoming Territory. His loss is my gain, though. Best meal I have had in months." Before she could respond, he was gone. Josephine walked back to the cabin under a sky full of more stars than she had ever seen. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Coyotes called in the distance, their voices wild and haunting. Inside her little cabin, she changed into her nightdress and sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing herself to process the day. She had been abandoned, humiliated, left with nothing. But somehow she had ended up here, in this rough cabin on a Wyoming ranch, with honest work and a roof over her head. And there was something about Austin Norris that made her feel safer than Gerald's pretty promises ever had. He had looked at her like she was a person, not a means to an end. He had offered help without demanding anything in return. It was too soon to call it hope, but it was something. And something was infinitely better than nothing. She slept better than she had in months. The first week passed in a blur of work. Josephine rose before dawn to start breakfast. Biscuits, gravy, fried eggs, bacon when they had it, strong coffee that could wake the dead. The men ate with enthusiasm and real gratitude, which made the early hours worth it. After breakfast, she cleaned the kitchen, made the beds in the main house, did laundry, tended the neglected garden, and started preparing lunch. Afternoons were for mending clothes, preserving food, more cleaning, and dinner preparation. By the time she fell into bed each night, she was too exhausted to think about anything. It was exactly what she needed. Austin was around the ranch more than she expected. He worked alongside his men, mending fences, tending cattle, breaking horses. But he also checked on her regularly, making sure she had everything she needed. He fixed the window in her cabin that stuck, brought her extra blankets when the nights turned cold, and showed her where the wild herbs grew for seasoning. They fell into an easy rhythm. She learned that he took his coffee black, that he had a sweet tooth for her apple pie, that he read books late into the night because he had trouble sleeping. He learned that she sang while she worked, that she was deadly afraid of spiders but fearless around the ranch's temperamental rooster, that she had a sharp wit hiding behind her quiet demeanor. 3 weeks after her arrival, Austin found her in the garden, fighting with an ambitious weed. She had her sleeves rolled up and dirt on her nose, cursing under her breath in a very unladylike manner. "Need help?" he asked, amusement clear in his voice. "This particular weed has decided it owns this garden, and I am attempting to convince it otherwise." He knelt beside her, and together they wrestled the stubborn weed free. Their hands brushed in the dirt, and Josephine felt a spark of something she was not ready to name. "You have done wonders with this place," Austin said, sitting back on his heels. "The garden, the house, the food. I knew we needed help, but I did not realize how much until you arrived." "I like the work," she admitted. "It feels good to see tangible results. In Boston, I spent so much time on pointless social calls and needlework. This feels real." "You do not miss city life." "I miss my parents. I miss having people who cared about me. But the rest," she shook her head, "no, I feel more myself here than I ever did there." Austin was quiet for a moment, pulling up smaller weeds around them. "I am glad you stayed. When you first arrived, I thought you might last a week before the isolation drove you back east." "I thought the same thing," she confessed. "But I think I was more isolated in Boston, surrounded by people, than I am here. At least here, the loneliness is honest." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt heat rise to her cheeks. "You are not what I expected, Josephine Taylor." "What did you expect?" "Someone more fragile, I suppose. Someone who would wilt under the harsh realities of ranch life. But you are stronger than you look." "I have had to be. Strength was not a choice, it was a necessity." "The best kind of strength usually is." He stood and offered her his hand. She took it, allowing him to pull her to her feet. He did not release her hand immediately, and she did not pull away. They stood there in the garden, the afternoon sun warm on their shoulders, something unspoken building between them. "Austin." "Aye, boss." Danny came running around the corner of the house, breaking the moment. "We have got a problem with the fence in the north pasture. Looks like someone cut it deliberate." Austin's expression hardened. "Show me." He turned back to Josephine. "We will continue this conversation later," but they did not. The fence problem led to discovering cattle had been stolen, which led to long discussions with the territorial marshal, which led to increased patrols of the property. Austin was preoccupied and tense, and Josephine did not want to add to his burdens. Still, something had changed between them in that garden. She caught him watching her when he thought she was not looking. Their conversations lingered longer over coffee after dinner. When he helped her carry supplies from the root cellar, his hand would rest on her back just a moment longer than necessary. Josephine tried to guard her heart. She had been fooled by a man's attention before, but Austin was nothing like Gerald. His kindness was consistent, his respect genuine. He never made her feel small or diminished. Around him, she felt like she could be fully herself, sharp edges and all. One evening in early October, a cold snap hit hard and early. Josephine was preparing dinner when Austin came in from checking on the stock. His face was red from the wind, his coat crusted with frost. "It is going to be a harsh winter," he said, warming his hands by the stove. "I can feel it in the air. We need to make sure you have enough firewood stocked at the cabin." "I can manage. I know you can manage." "You can manage just about anything, I have learned, but there is no point in suffering when preparation costs nothing but a little effort." She smiled at that. "You are a good man, Austin Norris." "I am a practical man," he corrected, "but I will take the compliment anyway." They worked side by side preparing dinner, a comfortable silence between them. The ranch hands were out dealing with the cattle, so it was just the two of them in the warm kitchen while wind howled outside. "Can I ask you something?" Josephine said, slicing carrots. "Why did you never marry? You have a successful ranch, you are kind, hardworking. Surely there were women interested." Austin was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Finally, he said, "I was engaged once, back in Philadelphia before I came west. Her name was Margaret. Beautiful, cultured, everything my family thought I should want. But she did not love me, not really. She loved the idea of me, of the life we would have. When I told her I wanted to move west, start a ranch, she looked at me like I had lost my mind, called me foolish and irresponsible. Broke off the engagement and married a banker within 6 months. I am sorry. Do not be. She did me a favor, made me realize I would rather be alone than with someone who did not understand who I really was. So I came west, focused on building the ranch, told myself I did not need anything else. But lately, I have been thinking maybe I was wrong about that." Josephine's heart was pounding. "What changed your mind?" He set down the knife he had been using and turned to face her fully. "You did. From the moment I saw you in the street, refusing to fall apart even though your whole world had just crumbled, I knew you were different. And these past weeks, watching you transform this place, seeing how you fit here like you were always meant to be, He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. "I am making a mess of this." "No," she said softly, "you are not. I know you came here for employment, not romance. I know you were burned by trust before, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel something for you, Josephine. I think about you constantly. When I am out on the range, I find myself hurrying back just to see you smile. When you laugh at something Danny said, I feel jealous of a 19-year-old boy. I am falling for you, and I do not know what to do about it." She should have been terrified. Every logical part of her brain screamed that it was too soon, too risky, too much like the mistake she made with Gerald. But her heart knew better. This was nothing like Gerald. This was real and terrifying and wonderful all at once. "I feel it too," she whispered. "I have been trying not to, trying to protect myself. But Austin, I think I have been falling for you since the day you knelt in the dust to help me pick up my scattered belongings. You saw me when I was broken and offered help without expecting anything in return. How could I not fall for that?" He crossed the kitchen in 2 strides and cupped her face in his calloused hands. "I want to kiss you, but I need you to know this is not just attraction or convenience. What I feel for you is real. You matter to me." "Then kiss me," she breathed. He did. It was gentle at first, tentative, like he was afraid she might break. But when she kissed him back, wrapping her arms around his neck, it deepened into something desperate and promising. He tasted like coffee and wind and home. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "I wish you had done it sooner," he laughed, and the sound filled her with warmth. "I was trying to be respectful. You have been nothing but respectful. You have been perfect. Far from perfect. But I promise I will try to be worthy of you, Josephine. I will never lie to you or abandon you. I will protect you and provide for you and respect you. And if you will let me, I will love you with everything I have." She pulled back slightly to look at him. "That sounds an awful lot like a proposal, Mr. Norris." His eyes widened. "I did not mean it to come out like that." "Well, I did, but not so soon. I wanted to court you properly, give you time, not rush you into anything after what happened before." Josephine felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears this time. "I do not need time to know what I want. I have spent my whole life being cautious and proper, doing what was expected. And where did it get me? Abandoned at a train station. But you, Austin Norris, you have shown me more genuine care in a few weeks than Gerald did in 6 months of letters. I do not need a lengthy courtship to know my own heart." "Are you sure?" His voice was uncertain, hopeful, vulnerable in a way that made her love him even more. "I have never been more sure of anything. Yes, I will marry you, whenever you want, however you want. Just do not make me wait too long." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she felt the last of her defenses crumble. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Not the careful negotiation she had with Gerald, but this wild, terrifying, beautiful feeling of falling and knowing someone would catch you. The kitchen door burst open, and Tom stumbled in, followed by Sam and Danny. They froze at the sight of Austin and Josephine wrapped in each other's arms. "Oh," Tom said eloquently, "we are interrupting something." Danny's face split into a wide grin. "About time, boss. We were taking bets on how long it would take you to work up the courage." Austin laughed, not releasing Josephine. "And who won?" "Sam. He said you would make your move before the first snow." "Technically, it has not snowed yet," Sam pointed out with a small smile. "Close enough," Danny argued. "Boys," Austin said, pulling Josephine closer to his side. "Miss Taylor has agreed to marry me. I expect you to treat her as my future wife with all the respect that entails." "We have been treating her with respect all along," Tom said. "But congratulations, boss. And to you, Miss Taylor. You are getting a good man, even if he cannot cook worth a damn." Dinner that night was a celebration. Josephine made her best dishes, and Austin broke out a bottle of whiskey he had been saving. The men toasted the happy couple, sharing stories and laughter. Danny played a battered harmonica he kept in the bunkhouse, and Tom sang old songs in a surprisingly good voice. Later, Austin walked Josephine back to her cabin under a sky glittering with stars. They walked slowly, hands clasped, neither wanting the night to end. "How soon do you want to get married?" he asked as they reached her door. "As soon as we can arrange it. Is there a preacher in Rawhide?" "Circuit preacher comes through once a month. He was here 2 weeks ago, so he will be back in about 2 weeks. Or we could ride to Cheyenne and find someone there if you want it sooner." 2 weeks is perfect. It will give me time to alter my mother's wedding dress. I brought it with me, foolishly thinking I would marry Gerald in it, but I am glad now. It feels right to marry you in something that connects me to my family." Austin lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "I wish they could be here to see you happy. I think they would approve of you. My father always said actions reveal character, not words, and your actions have shown me who you are. I will try to live up to that faith every day we have together." They kissed goodnight, and Josephine went inside feeling like she was floating. She lit a lamp and pulled out her mother's wedding dress from the bottom of her trunk. It was simple, cream-colored cotton with delicate embroidery on the bodice. It would need to be taken in at the waist, but otherwise it would fit perfectly. She held it up to herself in the small mirror above the washstand and imagined Austin's face when he saw her in it. Imagined standing before the preacher, pledging her life to this good man who had taken her broken dreams and offered her new ones. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Josephine worked on her dress in the evenings, carefully altering it to fit. Austin and the ranch hands built new furniture for the main house, since Josephine would be moving into Austin's room after the wedding. Sam had some skill with woodworking and crafted a beautiful headboard for their bed. Danny rode to Rawhide and spread the word about the wedding, inviting the whole town. Tom worked with Josephine to plan a feast for the celebration. Austin courted her properly during those weeks, despite the fact that they were already engaged. He brought her wildflowers from the meadow. He taught her to ride his gentlest horse so she could see more of the ranch. They took long walks in the evening, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's histories and hopes and fears. He told her about growing up in Philadelphia, the youngest of 3 children. His older brother had died in the war, which devastated his mother and made his father even more controlling. His sister Catherine had married well and lived the life their parents wanted, but she was not happy. Her letters to Austin were full of loneliness disguised as society gossip. Josephine told him about her childhood in Boston, the happy years before the influenza came. Her father had been a teacher, her mother a seamstress. They had not been wealthy, but their home had been full of love and laughter and books. After they died, she tried to maintain their house alone, but the debts were overwhelming. She took in sewing work, gave piano lessons to rude society children, slowly sold everything of value. When Gerald's letters started arriving, forwarded by a friend who knew his family, it had seemed like salvation, a way out of the grinding poverty that was crushing her. "I wanted so badly to believe in his promises," she admitted one evening as they watched the sunset from the porch. "I knew I was being foolish, trusting a man I had never met, but I was so desperate for things to get better." Austin squeezed her hand. "You were not foolish, you were hopeful. There is a difference." "Is there? Hope led me to make a terrible decision. Hope also brought you here, to me. To this life. If you had not gotten on that train, we never would have met. So maybe your hope was not misplaced. Maybe it just needed to travel through some dark places to get you where you belonged." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "When did you become so wise?" "I am not wise. I just know that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. If Margaret had agreed to come west with me, I would have spent my life with someone who did not truly love me. Her rejection freed me to find you." The wedding day arrived with perfect autumn weather. Clear blue skies, golden sunlight, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of pine. Josephine dressed in her mother's gown with shaking hands. She had no one to help her, but she managed the buttons and laces herself. When she looked in the mirror, she saw her mother's eyes looking back, and she whispered a prayer that her parents could somehow see this moment. Tom knocked on her cabin door. "Miss Taylor, I was wondering if I might have the honor of walking you down the aisle, so to speak. I know I am not family, but I thought you might like someone to stand with you." Josephine opened the door, tears in her eyes. "I would be honored, Tom, thank you." His eyes widened when he saw her. "You look beautiful, madam. Austin is a lucky man." The ceremony was held outside, between the house and the barn, with the mountains as backdrop. Austin had asked Danny to decorate, and the young man had outdone himself. Wildflowers hung in bunches. Chairs borrowed from the town were arranged in neat rows, and someone had constructed a simple arch covered in pine boughs. Most of Rawhide had turned out for the wedding. Josephine recognized the station master, the general store owner, several ranchers and their families. Even the saloon girls came, dressed respectably and sitting in the back row, but she only had eyes for Austin. He stood under the arch in his best suit, his hair neatly combed, his face shining with such love and joy that it took her breath away. When Tom walked her down the makeshift aisle and placed her hand in Austin's, she felt like she had finally come home. The circuit preacher was an elderly man with kind eyes and a booming voice. He spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together through hardship and joy. He asked them to repeat vows that promised devotion through all circumstances. When Austin slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, his hands were shaking. "I love you," he whispered just for her. "I love you too," she whispered back. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Austin, you may kiss your bride." He did, sweetly and thoroughly, while the crowd cheered and whistled. When they broke apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. The celebration that followed was the best party Rawhide had seen in years. Tables laden with food stretched across the yard. Sam played fiddle, and several townspeople had instruments as well. There was dancing and singing and so much laughter. Josephine danced first with her husband, then with Tom, Sam, and Danny. Austin danced with some of the town ladies out of politeness, but his eyes never left Josephine. As evening fell, the party showed no signs of slowing. But Austin pulled Josephine aside and they slipped away to the house while everyone was distracted by Danny's attempt at juggling. They climbed the stairs to their room, and suddenly, Josephine felt nervous. Austin seemed to sense it. He took both her hands in his. "We can take this as slow as you need," he said gently. "There is no rush, we have the rest of our lives." But Josephine shook her head. "I am not nervous because I am afraid. I am nervous because I want this so much it frightens me. I want you, Austin. I want everything marriage means. I want to build a life with you starting tonight." He kissed her softly. "Then let me show you how much I love you." He did, with tenderness and passion, making her feel cherished and desired in equal measure. Later, wrapped in his arms in their marriage bed, Josephine felt a peace she had never known. This was where she belonged. Not in Boston society, not in some fantasy life with Gerald, but here, with this good man who saw her clearly and loved her anyway. "What are you thinking?" Austin murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "That I am grateful. For the train station, for the broken suitcase, for every terrible thing that led me here. I would go through it all again to end up in this moment." He kissed the top of her head. "You never have to go through anything alone again. Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together," she agreed and fell asleep listening to the steady beat of his heart. The first year of marriage was not easy, but it was good. Winter hit hard, just as Austin predicted. Snow piled high, and the cold was brutal. There were nights when the wind howled like a living thing, and Josephine huddled close to Austin for warmth. The ranch work became more difficult, caring for animals in freezing temperatures, breaking ice on water troughs, hauling hay through drifts. But there was beauty too. The landscape transformed into something magical under snow. The silence of winter nights, so different from the city sounds she grew up with. The warmth of the kitchen when she baked bread. The comfort of sitting by the fire with Austin, reading aloud to each other from his small collection of books. In February, they lost 3 head of cattle to wolves. Austin and the men tracked the pack and drove them further into the mountains, but the loss still hurt. Money was tight already, and losing livestock made things tighter. "We will manage," Austin said, though Josephine could see the worry in his eyes. "Spring will come. We will sell some stock. Things will improve. She economized where she could, made clothes last longer, wasted nothing. She learned to cure meat, preserve vegetables, stretch every dollar. It was hard work, but she was good at it. And every evening when Austin came in exhausted and discouraged, she made sure there was a hot meal and a warm smile waiting. Little things, but they mattered. In April, Josephine realized her monthly courses had not come. She waited another month to be sure, then told Austin one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, "I think I am with child." He went very still. Then he turned to her, eyes wide. "Truly, you are certain?" "As certain as I can be without a doctor. All the signs are there." He let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. "We are having a baby. I am going to be a father. Josephine, this is the best news." His joy was infectious. She had been nervous about telling him, worried about the added expense and responsibility. But seeing his unrestrained happiness, she let herself feel it too. They were bringing a new life into the world. Their child. The thought was terrifying and wonderful. Tom, Sam, and Danny were thrilled when they heard the news. They immediately became overprotective, insisting Josephine not lift anything heavy or work too hard. She found it endearing and exasperating in equal measure. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she protested when Danny tried to carry a basket of laundry for her. "Austin will have our hides if anything happens to you," Danny said seriously, "and we happen to like our hides where they are." Austin was indeed protective, sometimes overly so. He worried constantly about her health, insisted she rest more, tried to hire a girl from town to help with housework. Josephine had to put her foot down. "I am fine," she told him firmly. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I promise to ask for help if I need it, but you cannot treat me like I am fragile. I am strong enough for this," he sighed. "I know you are strong, but you are carrying the most precious thing in my world, our child. Let me worry a little." "A little worrying is acceptable. Excessive worrying is not. Now please go back to work and let me finish making dinner." The summer passed in a haze of heat and growing. Josephine's belly swelled as the garden flourished. She felt the baby move for the first time in June, a flutter like butterfly wings. By July, the movements were strong enough that Austin could feel them too. He would place his hand on her stomach in the evenings, talking to their unborn child, telling stories about the ranch and making promises about the future. In August, they received a letter from Austin's sister Catherine. She was coming to visit, bringing her 2 children and leaving her husband behind in Philadelphia. The letter was cheerful, but Austin saw through it. "Something is wrong," he said, rereading the letter. "Catherine never travels without Thomas. And she would never bring the children west unless she had a good reason." Catherine arrived in September with her daughters, 8-year-old Margaret and 6-year-old Elizabeth. She looked older than Austin remembered, with worry lines around her eyes and a tightness to her smile. But she embraced her brother fiercely and was genuinely warm to Josephine. "Austin wrote me about you," Catherine said, holding Josephine's hands. "He said you were special, and I can see he was right. Thank you for making my brother so happy." "He makes me happy too," Josephine said simply. That evening, after the girls were asleep, Catherine finally told them why she came. Her husband Thomas had become increasingly controlling and cruel. He drank heavily, squandered money on gambling, and blamed Catherine for his failures. He had never struck her, but the verbal abuse was relentless. She was scared for her daughters, scared they would grow up thinking that was how men treated women. "I saved money in secret for 2 years," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Enough for train tickets west. I left him a letter saying we were visiting you and would return in a few months. But I am not going back, Austin. I cannot. I just need time to figure out what to do, where to go." Austin's jaw was tight with anger, but his voice was gentle. "You are not going anywhere, Kat. You and the girls stay here as long as you need. This is your home now." "I cannot impose like that. You are not imposing. You are family, and family takes care of each other." Josephine agreed completely. "We have room. The girls can share the spare bedroom and you can have the small room next to it. It will be tight when the baby comes, but we will manage." Catherine looked between them with wonder. "You would do that for me?" "Of course we would," Josephine said. "You need safety and time to heal. We can provide that." Having Catherine and the girls there changed the dynamics of the household, but in good ways. The ranch felt more alive with children's laughter. Margaret and Elizabeth were delightful, if initially shy. They had never been on a ranch before and were fascinated by everything. Danny appointed himself their unofficial guardian, teaching them about horses and cattle with surprising patience. Catherine threw herself into helping Josephine with housework and cooking. It was clear she needed to feel useful, needed to contribute. The two women became close friends quickly, bonding over their shared experience of being failed by men who should have protected them. Gerald was different from Thomas, Josephine explained one day as they preserved tomatoes from the garden, but the betrayal still cuts. The realization that you trusted someone who did not deserve it. "How did you move past it?" Catherine asked. "How did you trust Austin?" "I almost did not. I was so scared of being hurt again. But Austin was patient. He showed me through consistent actions that he was worthy of trust, and eventually I had to make a choice. Live in fear forever or take a risk on someone who had proven himself. I chose the risk, and it was the best decision I ever made." Catherine was quiet for a moment. "I do not know if I can do that again. Trust a man." "You do not have to. Not now, maybe not ever. You need to focus on healing and taking care of your girls. The rest will sort itself out in time." In October, a lawyer from Philadelphia arrived with papers for Catherine. Thomas was demanding she return immediately with the children. He claimed she had kidnapped them, threatened legal action. Catherine was terrified. But Austin rode to Cheyenne and hired a territorial lawyer who specialized in family matters. The lawyer explained that Wyoming had different laws than Pennsylvania. Women had more rights here. With the right legal strategy, Catherine could potentially divorce Thomas and retain custody of her daughters. It would be a long fight, but Catherine was ready for it. "I am done running," she said. "I am done being afraid. If Thomas wants a fight, he will get one." The baby arrived in early November during the first major snowstorm of the season. Josephine's labor started in the afternoon and lasted through the night. Austin paced the floor downstairs, while Catherine and a midwife from town attended Josephine upstairs. The ranch hands stayed in the bunkhouse, giving the family privacy. It was the longest night of Austin's life. Every cry from upstairs sent him toward the stairs, only to be turned back by Catherine. Finally, as dawn broke, he heard the thin wail of a newborn. He rushed upstairs to find Josephine exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle. "A son," she whispered. "We have a son." Austin could not speak. He could only stare at this impossibly small person, his son, with wonder. When Josephine placed the baby in his arms, Austin felt his entire world shift. This tiny life was now his responsibility, his privilege to protect and guide. "He is perfect," Austin managed finally. "You are perfect. Josephine, you have given me everything." They named him James after Josephine's father. James Norris, born November 8, 1883. He had his mother's delicate features and his father's dark hair. He was healthy and loud and utterly changed everything. Austin was a devoted father from the start. He would walk James around the house in the middle of the night when the baby fussed, singing off key lullabies. He built a beautiful cradle with his own hands, carved with horses and mountains. He was constantly afraid of doing something wrong, but he loved his son with a fierce intensity that surprised even Josephine. "I never knew I could feel like this," he admitted one night, watching James sleep. "Like my heart is walking around outside my body." "I know exactly what you mean," Josephine said, leaning against his shoulder. "It is terrifying and wonderful all at once." Christmas that year was special. The house was full of people and love and hope for the future. Catherine's daughters adored baby James, fighting over who got to help with him. They made simple decorations and cookies, sang carols around the fire. Austin gave Josephine a locket with James's baby hair inside. She gave him a new rifle he had been eyeing for months but claimed they could not afford. "Where did you get the money for this?" he asked, stunned. "I have been selling my sewing work to the general store in Rawhide. Little by little, I saved enough." "You needed a good rifle, and you deserve nice things sometimes." He kissed her thoroughly, not caring that the whole family was watching. "I love you more than words can express." The legal battle with Thomas dragged on through the winter. He sent threatening letters, hired an aggressive lawyer, spread rumors that Catherine was an unfit mother. But Wyoming law was on her side, and Catherine had her brother and his resources supporting her. In March of 1884, a judge granted Catherine a divorce on grounds of cruelty and awarded her full custody of Margaret and Elizabeth. Thomas was furious but defeated. He could not fight a territorial judgment from Pennsylvania. Catherine wept with relief when the papers arrived. "I am free." "We are truly free." "You were always free," Josephine told her. "You just needed the law to recognize it." Life settled into a new normal. The ranch continued to grow modestly. They expanded the herd, hired an additional ranch hand, improved the facilities. Josephine balanced motherhood with her household duties, amazed at how natural it felt. James was an easy baby, happy and curious about everything. When James was a year old, Josephine realized she was pregnant again. She told Austin on their second wedding anniversary. "It seems we are quite fertile," she said with a smile. Austin laughed and pulled her close. "I am not complaining. I love having a full house, though we might need to build an addition soon." The second baby, another boy they named Thomas after Josephine's late brother, arrived in the summer of 1885. He was different from James, more serious and observant. But he was healthy and loved, which was all that mattered. Catherine eventually began keeping company with Sam, much to everyone's surprise, including her own. He was quiet and gentle, the opposite of her first husband in every way. He courted her slowly, never pushing, always respectful of her past trauma. When he finally asked her to marry him 2 years after her divorce, she said yes with a full heart. They married in the spring of 1886, with James and Thomas serving as the world's most chaotic ring bearers. Sam moved into the ranch house with Catherine and her daughters, and they expanded the house to accommodate everyone. It was cramped and loud and chaotic and absolutely wonderful. Josephine had a daughter in 1887, whom they named Rose after Austin's mother in a gesture of reconciliation. Austin's parents had initially been horrified by his choice to move west and marry a penniless woman. But when Austin sent them photographs of their grandchildren, something softened in his mother. She started writing letters, awkward at first, then increasingly warm. She even sent gifts for the children and invited the family to visit Philadelphia, though they never did. The ranch was their home now. The years passed in a blur of planting and harvesting, branding cattle and mending fences, children growing and laughter filling the house. Danny eventually married a girl from Rawhide and bought a small spread neighboring Austin's ranch. Tom remained a bachelor, declaring himself married to the land, but he was a beloved uncle to all the children. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Austin and Josephine sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard. James was nearly 9, Thomas was 7, and Rose was 5. They were arguing about something, as siblings do, but it was good-natured. "Do you ever think about that day at the train station?" Austin asked, his arm around Josephine's shoulders. "Sometimes," she admitted. "It feels like a lifetime ago, like it happened to a different person." "In some ways it did. We are both different people than we were then. Better people, I think, stronger, happier, definitely happier." He kissed her temple. "Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy with more dreams than sense." She laughed. "Thank you for taking a chance on a woman with a broken suitcase and a broken heart. Your suitcase was broken. Your heart was just bruised. And look what we built together." They looked out over the ranch, the house they had expanded twice to fit their growing family, the barn and corrals that housed quality horses and healthy cattle, the garden that fed them through the winter. The mountains in the distance, eternal and beautiful. But more than the physical things, they had built a family, a real, messy, loving family that supported each other through everything. Catherine emerged from the house with Sam, their own baby daughter, on her hip. Margaret and Elizabeth, now young women themselves, followed behind, heading to town for some social event. The ranch hands were finishing up their work for the day, their voices carrying across the yard. This was everything Josephine had dreamed of when she stepped off that train in Rawhide. A home, a family, a place where she belonged. It had not come the way she expected. Gerald's betrayal had been devastating at the time, but it led her to Austin, to this life, to these people she loved. "No regrets?" Austin asked softly. "Not a single one. Every hardship, every struggle, every moment of fear or pain led me here. How could I regret that?" He pulled her closer. "I love you, Josephine Norris, more now than the day I married you, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. That is the best promise you have ever made me. And you have kept every promise you ever made." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The children's laughter mixed with the evening sounds of the ranch. Inside, someone was starting dinner, and the smell of bread baking drifted through the open windows. This was home. Not the house or the land, though those mattered. Home was the people, the love, the life they had built together from nothing but hope and hard work and faith in each other. Josephine thought back to that terrified woman standing on the train platform with one broken suitcase, her dreams in shambles. If she could go back and tell that woman what the future held, she would not believe it. That such happiness was possible. That love could be real and lasting and true. That a cowboy with kind eyes and calloused hands would take both her and her dreams and transform them into something more beautiful than she ever imagined. But she did not need to go back. She was here now, living the life she was always meant to have. And it was more than enough. It was everything. Years continued to flow like water over stone, smoothing the rough edges and deepening the grooves of their lives. The ranch prospered through good years and survived the lean ones. James grew into a young man who loved the land as much as his father did, learning everything Austin could teach him about ranching and livestock. Thomas surprised everyone by showing an aptitude for numbers and business, helping to modernize their operations and find better markets for their cattle. Rose was fearless, riding horses before she could properly walk, insisting on helping with ranch work despite being the baby of the family. Austin and Josephine added 2 more children to their brood. Another daughter, Anne, born in 1889, who was quiet and studious, preferring books to horses. And finally, A surprise son they named William, born in 1892 when Josephine thought she was finished having children. He came into the world laughing and rarely stopped, filling the house with joy even during difficult times. The territorial years gave way to statehood when Wyoming joined the Union in 1890. Women had the right to vote here, something that still shocked visitors from back east. Catherine exercised that right with fierce determination, teaching her daughters and Josephine's daughters that their voices mattered, that they had power and agency in this new world they were building. In 1895, a drought hit hard. The grasslands turned brown and brittle, water sources dried up, and cattle prices plummeted. Many smaller ranches went under. Austin and Josephine had to make difficult decisions, selling off stock at a loss just to keep the core herd alive. They let go of 2 ranch hands, keeping only Tom and one other man. Money was tighter than it had been since the early years, but they survived. Josephine went back to taking and sewing work. James and Thomas worked twice as hard to make up for the reduced staff. Catherine and Sam contributed everything they could. The whole family pulled together and they made it through. When the rains finally returned in 1896, it felt like a resurrection. The land greened almost overnight, springs bubbled back to life, and hope returned to the territory. Austin stood in the meadow one morning, watching water flow in a creek that had been dry for 2 years, and wept with relief. Josephine found him there and wrapped her arms around him from behind. "We made it. We made it," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "I was not sure we would. There were nights I lay awake terrified we would lose everything. But we did not. We held on and we made it through, together." He turned to face her, cupping her face in his weathered hands. They were both older now, streaks of gray in their hair, lines on their faces earned through years of sun and struggle and laughter. But when he looked at her, he still saw the brave woman who refused to fall apart even when her world crumbled. And when she looked at him, she still saw the kind cowboy who helped her gather her scattered belongings without asking for anything in return. "I would do it all again," Austin said. "Every hard year, every struggle, every moment of fear, as long as it meant ending up here with you. Good thing, because we are not done yet. We have children to raise, grandchildren to spoil someday, and at least another 40 years of building this life together." He laughed. 40 years. You think we will make it that long? I know we will. We are too stubborn to do anything else." She was right, as she usually was. They did make it, and then some. James married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring county in 1898. They gave Austin and Josephine their first grandchild, a boy named Austin after his grandfather, in 1899. Holding that baby, seeing the continuation of their family line, Austin felt a sense of completion he had not known he was missing. Thomas went to college in Laramie, studying business and agriculture, then returned to help modernize the ranch operations. He married a schoolteacher in 1902, a sharp-minded woman named Helen who fit perfectly into their chaotic family. They had 3 daughters in quick succession, and Thomas joked that he was doomed to be forever outnumbered by women. Rose shocked everyone by becoming a veterinarian, one of the first female veterinarians in Wyoming. She had to fight for her education, face discrimination and doubt, but she persevered with the same determination her mother showed in transforming a broken suitcase full of dreams into a beautiful life. She married late, at 32, to a fellow veterinarian who treated her as an equal partner in all things. Anne became a teacher, following her love of books and learning. She married a quiet rancher and had 2 children, dividing her time between teaching and ranch life. William, the baby of the family, turned out to have his father's love of the land and his mother's business sense. He expanded the ranch operations into new areas, always innovating while respecting tradition. Catherine and Sam had 3 more children after their daughter. Their family merged seamlessly with Austin and Josephine's, creating a sprawling clan connected by blood and love and shared history. Margaret and Elizabeth both married well and often visited with their own children, bringing laughter and chaos. In 1907, on their 25th wedding anniversary, the whole extended family gathered at the ranch for a massive celebration. Children and grandchildren filled every corner of the house and overflowed into tents in the yard. There was a feast that took 3 days to prepare, music and dancing, stories and laughter that lasted long into the night. Austin stood to make a toast, looking around at the faces of his family. 25 years ago, I met a woman at a train station. She had been abandoned, left with nothing but a broken suitcase and more courage than anyone I have ever known. I offered her a job, thinking I was helping her, but the truth is, she saved me. She took this lonely ranch and turned it into a home. She took my half-formed dreams and helped me build them into something real. Everything you see here, everyone gathered here, exists because Josephine Taylor took a chance on a cowboy who fell in love with her at first sight. Josephine stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. I did not take a chance on just any cowboy. I took a chance on the best man I have ever known. You gave me a home when I had none. You gave me love when I thought I was unworthy of it. You gave me a family, a purpose, a life beyond anything I imagined. I was lost and you found me. I was broken and you helped me heal. I love you more than words can express. Austin Norris. They kissed while the family cheered and whistled. The grandchildren made exaggerated gagging noises that sent everyone into fresh gales of laughter. The party continued for 2 more days. Old friends from town came and went. Former ranch hands visited to pay their respects. The circuit preacher who married them, now elderly and retired, made the journey to congratulate them. Danny, now a successful rancher himself, got slightly drunk and gave a rambling speech about how Austin and Josephine's love gave him hope that true partnership was possible. As the celebration wound down, Austin and Josephine found themselves alone on the porch again, their favorite spot. The moon was full and bright, illuminating the landscape they had worked so hard to build and maintain. "Are you happy?" Austin asked, though he knew the answer, deliriously happy. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life. That I get to wake up every morning next to you, surrounded by our family, living this beautiful, complicated life we built. It was not always beautiful. We had some hard years. But we had them together. That made all the difference." He pulled her close, and they swayed slightly to music only they could hear. "When I saw you in the street that day, suitcase broken, refusing to cry, I knew you were special. But I had no idea just how special. You have exceeded every hope and dream I ever had, Josephine." "You took both me and my dreams that day," she said softly. "And you transformed them into something beyond my wildest imaginings. I thought I knew what I wanted. A home, a garden, children. And you gave me all that. But you gave me so much more. You gave me yourself fully and completely. You gave me partnership and respect and a love that grows stronger every year. You gave me a life I am proud of." They stood together in the moonlight, 2 people who had found each other through heartbreak and chance, who had built something lasting and true through hard work and faith and unwavering commitment to each other. The years continued to pass. They slowed down gradually, letting their children take on more of the ranch work. They spent more time with grandchildren, passing on stories and values and skills. They took pleasure in simple things, morning coffee on the porch, evening walks, working in the garden together, reading by the fire. In 1920, on their 38th wedding anniversary, Josephine had a stroke. It was mild, but it scared them both. Austin hovered constantly until she threatened to hit him with her cane if he did not give her space to breathe. "I am not dying," she insisted. "I am just old. There is a difference." "You are not old. You are seasoned, like a good cast iron skillet." She laughed despite herself. "Did you just compare me to cookware?" "I compared you to the most essential tool in any kitchen. I meant it as a compliment. You are lucky I love you, Austin Norris." "I am the luckiest man who ever lived, and I have known that since the day I saw you refuse to fall apart when any reasonable person would have crumbled." She recovered from the stroke, though she moved slower and tired more easily. Austin adapted without complaint, taking over tasks she could no longer manage, never making her feel diminished or useless. They adjusted to their changing abilities together, with the same teamwork that had carried them through 4 decades of marriage. In 1925, they celebrated their 40th anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The ranch was now a substantial operation run primarily by James and Thomas, with input from William. Rose lived in Cheyenne with her veterinary practice but visited frequently. Anne divided her time between teaching and helping her husband with his ranch. Austin was 71 now, Josephine 68. They both showed the wear of their years, but they were still sharp-minded and full of life. Austin still rode out to check on the cattle, though not as often or as far. Josephine still cooked Sunday dinners for whoever could make it, though Catherine and her daughters-in-law now did most of the heavy work. That evening, after the party quieted and most of the family had gone to bed, Austin and Josephine sat on their porch one more time. They had sat here thousands of times over the decades, watching the sun rise and set, seeing their children grow, weathering storms both literal and metaphorical. 40 years, Josephine mused. It went so fast. Fastest 40 years of my life, also the best. Do you remember what you said to me that first day? In the wagon on the way here. Which part? You said the West forces you to decide what you really want, who you really are. You were right about that. Was I? What did you decide? She turned to look at him, her eyes still bright despite their age. I decided I wanted a life that mattered. I wanted to build something real with someone who saw me for who I truly was. I wanted love that would last, that would deepen and grow even when things got hard. And I got all of that, Austin, with you. He took her hand, his thumb brushing over her wedding ring, worn smooth after 4 decades. I decided I wanted a partner, not just a wife. Someone who would work beside me, challenge me, make me better. Someone who could turn a house into a home and a dream into reality. I wanted you, Josephine. From that first moment, I wanted you. And every day since has only made me more certain that you were the best thing that ever happened to me. They kissed, gentle and sweet. A kiss that held 4 decades of shared history, of struggles overcome and joys celebrated, of a love that had proven itself through every test life could devise. Inside the house, their family slept peacefully. Their children and grandchildren, the legacy of their love made flesh. Outside, the ranch stretched into darkness, the land they had worked and nurtured and built their life upon. And above, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, witnessing this moment of quiet love between 2 people who had found each other against all odds. Josephine rested her head on Austin's shoulder and he wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me, for choosing me, for building this life with me, for loving me even when I was hard to love, for 40 years of partnership and friendship and romance, for everything. The pleasure has been entirely mine, Mrs. Norris. And if I get another 40 years, I will count myself blessed beyond measure." She smiled against his shoulder. "I do not think we get another 40 years, but whatever time we have left, I want to spend it exactly like this. With you, in the home we built, surrounded by the family we created. This is all I ever wanted, all I ever needed. Then we are both exactly where we belong." They sat in the peaceful silence, two souls who had traveled impossible distances to find each other. From a train platform in Rawhide, where a young woman stood with a broken suitcase and shattered dreams, to this porch where an old couple sat with a lifetime of memories and a love that had outlasted every hardship. The journey had been long and sometimes difficult, but it had been worth every step. Because a cowboy had seen a woman in need and offered help without expecting anything in return. Because that woman had been brave enough to accept, to trust, to hope again. Because they both chose, every single day, to build their life together with honesty and respect and unwavering commitment. The night deepened around them, but they remained on the porch, neither ready to let go of this moment. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and joys. Their children would continue running the ranch, their grandchildren would grow and start families of their own, and the wheel of life would keep turning. But tonight, there was just this. Two people who had found each other in the vast wilderness of the American West and created something beautiful and lasting. A love story that started with abandonment and a broken suitcase and became a legacy of family, commitment, and dreams fulfilled beyond measure. Austin pressed a kiss to Josephine's silver hair. "I love you. I love you too, always and forever." And under the star-filled Wyoming sky, in the home they had built with their own hands and hearts, surrounded by the family born from their love, they sat together, complete, content, home. The cowboy had indeed taken both her and her dreams that day 40 years ago. But he had not stolen them. He had cherished them, nurtured them, and helped her transform them into something far greater than she could have achieved alone. Together, they had built not just a ranch or a family, but a legacy of love that would endure for generations to come. And that was the greatest dream of all.